Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we add 2 billion new people by 2050, how are we going to be able to provide the basic infrastructure as well as clean land, clean water, and clean air? And we have someone who's working on all three of those, and she is a dynamic leader for the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. And so we're glad to have Laura Chamberlin, who is coming to us. She's the program manager of the Alice Ferguson Foundation. And the tagline is Clean Land, Safe Water, and Healthy Lives. And Laura, that is a tremendous motto you have.
Yes, it is. Thank you for having me. We are based, as you said, here in the Potomac watershed, and we are working to connect people to their natural world, the sustainable agricultural practices, and their cultural heritage of their local watershed through education, stewardship, and advocacy.
Now tell us a little bit about the history. I know that you have actually a long history, and I think that's very important for our domestic and international audiences to know about. And then we're going to talk about some of the work you're doing as far as the Potomac River and the Potomac watershed. Sure.
Well, we have been in existence since 1954. And we've been doing environmental education here in the Potomac watershed since the 60s. And we've been serving youth in the area, and they get their environmental education experience down at our farm on the Potomac. We get lots of students out into national parks throughout the region. But the program that I work for is our Trash-Free Potomac Watershed Initiative.
Now I want to try to bring up this first slide here because this is something that we actually don't want. And so if we can bring this first slide up, and this is actually what you're trying to take care of and remediate, correct?
Yes, this is what I work on, is the trash. And we started
this. Is that a trashy job?
It is. And so what we're doing now is we're talking trash. So we started doing cleanups in 1989, which is now, this year was our 25th year of the Potomac River watershed.
That's incredible.
Cleanup.
It's a long time to do that.
It is. And we started because of those students that we were bringing out to our farm. They were seeing our shoreline getting trashed by trash litter coming down from upstream from the city. And we started doing cleanups, and we've been doing cleanups since then. This year, our 25th year, we had over 600 sites in the watershed with 14,000 volunteers who picked up over 200 tons of trash.
Oh my gosh, 200 tons of trash. And this is something you've been at for, you said, 25 years?
25 years.
And we still have 200 tons of trash out there?
We still have 200 tons of trash. So in 2005, so this will be our 8th year of that, we started the whole initiative, which is working to solve the problem so we can stop doing cleanups and get on with doing other more fun things. And that initiative works through a 5-pronged approach: policy, regulation, enforcement, public education, and market-based incentives to try and solve this problem that we have in the region.
Yeah, this is absolutely incredible, and to see these photographs and all the trash. And I've been out on several of these with the Anacostia.
Great.
And in just one little section, we picked up 2 complete truckloads of trash, and I don't think we had more than 100 feet of the small creek that we had. And they say every year they go out and it's the same thing, time in, time out. But where is the Potomac River watershed, and where is it located, and why is it important that we actually pick up the litter from these areas?
Right, so we're actually one of the largest watersheds in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And we have about 15,000 square miles, which is, I think, 4.6 million people in that watershed. And it covers a little bit of Pennsylvania, a little bit of West Virginia, a bunch of Virginia and Maryland, and then of course all of the District of Columbia is in the Potomac watershed.
Yeah. Well, looking at something that's that large as far as a watershed, what is exactly a watershed?
Sure, so that's a great question. It's one of the questions we ask all the 5th graders. And it is where it's the area, so if you have a body of water, say the Potomac River, it's all of the area that drains into that river. So if a drop of water hits somewhere in that area that we call the watershed, could eventually end up in the river. And so that means everything that's happening on the land in that watershed could impact the river. And that river is our drinking water. It has wildlife in it. It is a place that we want to go and recreate. And if trash is ending up in that river, that's not something that we need to see happening in our watershed.
Well, looking at the cleanup results, these are just tremendous numbers and something we talked about a little earlier. But let's go back and look at this and tell us when you started about what was the number of volunteers, in other words, the growth since the 1954 start of their organization.
So, well, the cleanup started in 1989. So we were just doing education before then. In 1989, it was just 2 sites, one at our farm on the Potomac River, we have a shoreline there, and then another just a little bit ways down at one of our partner organizations. So that was maybe 50, 75 volunteers. And so in that time, we've grown progressively over the years to this 633 this past year. And in total, 128,000 over the last 25 years.
Well, that is absolutely
incredible.
Which is
an amazing number of people that are getting out and trying to clean up their watershed.
Right. Well, it's incredible, too, that you have over 14,000 people volunteering, at one time to do all this.
Exactly.
So that shows the vitality, but also the outreach of your organization. So why is litter really the major challenge that you've actually chosen as one of, the areas that you want to address?
Yes, well, we consider it to be kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's visible, you can see it when you're down on that shoreline. There's a lot of pollutants in the river, but this one you can see, and it's easy for folks to understand what harm it's causing. They can see that it's decreasing their property values. They can see that it's going to cost money to clean it up, and they can see that it is a bird could swallow a bottle cap, and so they can understand that problem, and it makes them more willing to get engaged on it. So
this is one of the things that I have a lot of conversation about. People say, what's the big deal about plastic bags, the 5-cent surcharge on taking plastic bags and by some of the local governments, but they break down very quickly. This is the plastic bags, and then the birds start eating it, thinking it's actually food, and it actually kills them because then they're not getting the proper nutrition out of the river itself.
Exactly, and we worked on that, the 5-cent fee in DC and now in Montgomery County, and we keep working on it in Maryland and Virginia as well. And that we've seen a huge success from that. We have seen over 50% reduction of plastic bags as soon as that fee hit the stores. And we've also seen that people are okay with it. They are willing to change their behavior. The businesses like it. They're saving money. And it's working to keep those plastic bags out of our streams.
Now, looking at the 5 cents, this is something I wanted to ask, and since you've been involved in the policy side of this whole thing, why does 5 cents have that tremendous impact? Because it was like when they first started, just within weeks, I think it was almost a 20% reduction because of the nickel.
Right.
So what is it about the 5 cents that people say, hey, I need to stop, think about this, no, I won't take the bag?
Yeah, it's just that little bit of a trigger to get you thinking, and that's all we want. We're not looking to raise money from this. We just want to trigger a little change, and that's all some people need. And we also work on in 10 states now. They have beverage container deposits. You may remember when you were a little younger that you could bring your Coke bottles back to the store and get 5 cents back. That's a huge way to reduce that bottle litter, so beverage container litter. And so we're working to see if we can see something like that in this region, because that's one of our largest volume pieces of litter.
I know the whole thing about what you have here as far as this photograph, that you do a lot of education before people get involved, and also you're going out and you're trying to provide awareness campaigns and all that. So what typically would people be learning as they go through these types of seminars?
Sure. So this one is actually from an enforcement seminar, and so we have a litter enforcement month every month to remind folks that it's actually illegal to litter. And so this was police officers getting out and talking to youth in the community about a wide range of things, including litter. But we talk about a couple of different things, and we talk about those impacts so that people can understand that. But we also talk about what happens to that trash on the street. And many, many folks don't understand that the trash on the street goes down the storm drain and ends up in the river. And I actually didn't know either before I came to the Alice Ferguson Foundation that there are no filters on those storm drains. The water that's on the street ends up in the river.
Well, looking at this slide here, I think this is just a test to that fact that where people just throw their trash, even though it may start in some place like this, it's going to end up sometime in a tributary, no matter how large or how small, because the water is taking all this. It's kind of the mass broom, if you will, that's cleaning up everything. And then, of course, it's you and your volunteers that have to go out and take care of this. So looking at something like this, what kind of awareness can we raise among citizens to say, just don't do this?
Sure. So we are, we do the cleanups. That's one of our big ways to get awareness out there. We also have a litter prevention campaign, and that campaign is trying to get at the empowering component here. And so your litter hits close to home, and your piece by piece litter adds up. It makes the places we go to unsafe and unhealthy, and get at that unhealthy aspect, the rats and the vermin and things like that. We also work a lot with schools. We have a trash-free schools program, and we get into those schools and try and engage the students while they're still in those stage where they're learning and wanting to, they're, as one of my colleagues says, they're a glass that's empty, and they're ready to be filled up. And so if we fill them up with the right knowledge, then we'll have great success.
Well, looking at this photograph we have right here, this is in the schools and getting in really filling that glass with good ideas, good intentions, but also with good energy. So how do you energize the students so it's fun to go out and do this kind of thing and to actually establish this idea of volunteerism that extends throughout their whole life?
Yes. Well, this last spring, one of the really exciting things we did is we had a YouTube contest, and we had actually a $1,000 prize, which was one motivating factor. But the bigger motivating factor was this opportunity to have their voice be heard. And we had some great submissions from local schools and local students, and they really let their voice be heard on why they think litter needs to be solved and how we can go about doing it.
Well, we have about 30 seconds left. What are we looking at here, and why is this important, what we're seeing around the bus stop?
Sure. So this is a business owner. He wanted to solve the problem of litter around his business. So we said, let's put up a trash can by your bus stop, and let's put up one of our signs. And he saw an instant reduction in trash at that spot. And he said, he started putting more trash cans down the street. Instant reduction. And so sometimes it's just as simple as getting those resources out for the community to use, and then they will use it, and we can help solve this problem.
Well, the whole thing about Laura Chamberlin, who's the program manager of Alice Ferguson Foundation, you really just need to make it easy for people. Exactly. And that's not saying people are lazy or they don't have the right ideas. The fact is, you look around, you can't find a receptacle. Now what do I do with this? And they don't want to take it with them. So thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 144 different nations looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And also it takes real leadership to bring about change, not only within the Northern American area of Canada, Mexico, and the United States, but also around the globe. We have a number of people that we are talking with on Emerald Planet to identify those best practices that are being used in a very specific region or countries of the planet that then can be duplicated and replicated as we move towards a planet that has 9 billion souls. We have a gentleman who is actively working on this. I think he has the motto of Run, Daren, Run, but Daren Wendell, who is Executive Director of ActiveWater. And sitting right beside me is Laura Chamberlin, who is the Program Manager for Alice Ferguson Foundation. And she's here in case we lose our Skype connection with Daren. So Daren, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Oh, thank you. Very honored.
Glad to have you here, and we've already have a very yucky looking photograph here of what you're dealing with as you're going around the globe. But tell us first about ActiveWater, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the projects that you and your numerous volunteers are involved in.
Sure. ActiveWater is a faith-based organization, and what we do is we help come alongside the gifts that people have to help create a foundation really to help them fundraise to address the water crisis around the world. Currently, ActiveWater works in 2 places. We work in Africa and Asia. In Africa, we work in a city called Ndola, and in Asia, we work right on the border of Thailand in a small town called Phut Phet.
Well, I tell you, it's just incredible the photographs you shared with us. And this is something, Daren, that most people don't really realize if they're in the more developed countries of North America, Europe, and a number of countries in Asia, and of course increasingly in South America. But when you look at these photographs and what people are actually having to go through just to have water to sustain themselves, it's incredible what they're facing.
It truly is. Some of the photos that you're looking at, I just returned from Africa with my wife about 2.5 weeks ago, and this particular photo is in a village called Koloko. And I have been to a lot of villages, but I've never seen a village where I've seen so many people walking to go get water. It seems like that's what they're doing all day long. Young children, men, women, just going to get water. And in this particular village, they're walking up to 3 miles every morning to go get that water. Actually had a young girl, I was at a pump and she came up running up to me and she's like, "Are you gonna fix this well? Are you gonna fix this well?" And so I started talking to her. She's like, "I walked 5 kilometers to go get water and this water is not even clean. And so please fix this well."
Well, what we want to do, if we can come back, Daren, we're going to leave you up too, but also I like to have these slides because this really tells a story. There we go. But looking at this, as you were saying, 5 kilometers for this young girl, my understanding is it's about an average of 2.5 miles one way for people to get water. Most of it's dirty, and some of it's not much more than mud. So what we're looking at here is probably a vast improvement of some areas, but you see at all ages. And also these children, as I understand it, and you may want to comment on this, Daren, they don't really have a chance to go to school, either girls or the males, because they're out collecting water and then oftentimes even firewood.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times when I speak, especially to high school students, junior high students, I share with them, and I kind of try to unwrap it for them. If you were walking 2 to 3 miles every morning to get water, what wouldn't you be able to do? And eventually they get around to, oh, I go to school every morning. So they realize at that moment, like, wow, school is really a blessing. Because I know in Africa, a lot of times, especially if you live out in the bush, school is sometimes non-existent, and it's not always free, so it's very difficult.
Yeah, I know in many of these countries, unless they have a school uniform, they have shoes, a backpack at least, and some, what I guess you would say are books, they can't even go to school, so they have to be fully outfitted by their family. And if you have multiple children and you're living on equivalent to $1 or $2 a day, that's very difficult to do. So looking at this scene that we have here, the people in this seminar, I think this is you're getting people ready to start volunteering and try to bring water into their village?
Well, this is actually in a village called Mukulungwe. We came out, we help fund sanitation hygiene trainings within the communities, because a lot of time, because there is an educational system, because we grew up with an educational system. Okay, you got to wash your hands. We understand germs. We understand microbes. But there, this is the first time maybe they've been hearing about this. So this is actually a sanitation hygiene training out in the bush of Africa, where they're learning maybe for the first time washing your hands. Simply by doing that before cooking could reduce diarrheal diseases by up to 47%. So these are just part of our holistic approach to the water crisis.
Yeah, I know in India they have a nationwide with a country of a little over 1.3 billion people now, where they're trying to go through every one of the schools and just teach about soap and the importance of that, and just about any kind of water, but that can kill up to about 94% of the germs they have on their hands. And as you know, the biggest killer of children really is the vermin and the parasites and bacteria they get out of bad water.
It really is. It's a huge
now,
problem.
looking at what is the holistic approach, I know this really goes back to this last slide that we looked at, but this holistic approach of involving the villagers and getting them involved in trying to bring clean water, how do you accomplish that, and how do you identify the people actually going to be involved?
Yeah, a holistic approach for ActiveWater. We've seen just a lot of organizations, churches, even the governments, putting in water resources and later to fall into disrepair. And so with ActiveWater, we help fund wells, bio-sand filters, pump repair teams that actually fix the wells after maybe they've broken down, sanitation hygiene trainings, and we're a ministry, so the presentation of the gospel as well.
Yeah, well, looking at having everybody working together, this is the epitome of collaboration among people within the various areas. Well, what is a biosand filter? Let's share that with our domestic and international audiences that may not even know what that is.
Yeah, a biosand filter is really, it's like a 3-foot box made out of cement, made in country and sustainable. And it goes within the home, because a lot of times, by the time the water gets from the pump and by the time you drink it, it can get contaminated, whether it's a dirty bucket or someone hasn't washed their hands or flies have landed in it. And so this goes in the home. It costs around $85, provides safe, clean drinking water for 12 to 15 people to up to 15 to 20 years if properly maintained. So it's really a game changer.
That is really incredible, and you think about the $85, and that's a huge investment for people with meager means. But at the same time, a couple of trips to the physician, children with the childhood waterborne diseases would more than pay for itself to have that type of sand filter. As you know, Laura is here. She's the program manager of the Allison Ferguson Foundation and working with the Potomac River, and she has a question for you.
Well, hello, Daren. And so I'm just curious, how have you been identifying and recruiting the villagers to work on your project?
On the site, we have partners on the ground who actually carry out the work. So ActiveWater is a fundraising and education nonprofit here in the States. And so in order to get a well in the community or get a biosand filter, you have to go through our partners and you have to have community health promoters. So you got to have a bunch of people in your community who say, hey, this is important to our community and we are going to be responsible for this well for the long term.
Looking at this next slide, and actually we had up a little earlier as far as the actual drilling of the well, what is involved in this, and how is your organization, ActiveWater, bring this connect between the well drilling and the citizens so that they actually can start having access to clean water, but in the village itself even?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great picture. And what I love about all these pictures that ActiveWater has is that it's done by the native people. It's being carried out. So all these people that you see are Zambian men and women, are Cambodian men and women. And so this is a well cost around anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000. Provide well for up to water for up to anywhere from 750 to 1,500 people in the community, and it'll take around 5 days to put in. So this is just an example of one of those wells where it's being taken place.
Well, I want to show this. This photograph is absolutely priceless, Daren, to share this. When you go from, I'm going to back up on these slides, so you go from, this effort here, drilling, then you're putting in the concrete base and the drain, and then you have this very exciting photograph. And of course, this is much closer into the village. So where do you actually locate the pumps so that they're protected and they're also maintained on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, this is taking place by the ministry on the ground. They're constantly updating, making sure that these pumps are right. They are in constant communication with leaders within the community. So if a pump goes down, they're notified, and before, very shortly afterwards, there's a pump repair team out there to take care of this well.
Yeah, looking at also too, you sent some slides along about food production, and of course, as you drill wells and you have water within the community, all of a sudden you start expanding the quality and the amount of the food that you have. How do you combine the food production in with the efforts that you're doing as far as creating more, better, and closer water access?
Yeah, the ministry that we help fund also does a lot with agriculture, and so it kind of goes a lot of times hand in hand. The pictures that you're showing right now on the screen, these are actually the biosand filters from the biosand filter factory. They're curing, and then they go into a flatbed truck and driven out to the community. For those able to, who have gone through a sanitation hygiene training, actually receive one of these free of charge.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. We're just about out of time, only about 30 seconds. So what do you see for the future of ActiveWater for the next, say, 5, 10, 15 years? And you only have about 20 seconds, so you got to be quick.
Our mission is to provide safe, clean drinking water to the world. And so currently when we work in Africa and Asia, our hope is to really kind of broaden our horizons, maybe to South America and India, and really just grow in our capacity.
Well, Daren Wendell is Executive Director of ActiveWater, and Laura Chamberlin, sitting right beside me, Program Manager for the Alice Ferguson Foundation. And Daren, thank you for being with us and the outstanding work that you're doing as far as Run Daren Run, as far as raising awareness of ActiveWater and also meeting the needs of people that you have in villages in Africa and Southeast Asia. And thank you for being with us as we learn more about how to create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
It would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. In these 144 different countries with which we are in contact and actually engaged in projects and activities, we want to learn about the people that are making a difference in these areas. And so there's a very special program focused on water and also food production by Brett Freedman, who is the Director of Clean Water Initiative, coming to us by Skype. And sitting right beside me is Laura Chamberlin, who is the Program Manager for the Alice Ferguson Foundation in Washington, D.C. And Brett, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you very much, Sam.
I'm glad to have you with us, and it's just really incredible the work you're doing and the intensity that you have as far as northern Uganda. But tell us a little bit about Clear Water Initiative, and then we'll get into some of the activities, and also we're going to show some of the slides that you shared with us to show and demonstrate some of your work.
Great. Well, essentially, Clear Water Initiative was developed by a close friend of mine back in 2007. During that time, Ben, my friend, had been deployed into the Horn of Africa for the U.S. Army and saw firsthand how easy, cheap, and effective one could have such an impact on so many people. So he started on his own initiative, basically an NGO that was providing maybe 1 or 2 projects per year, borehole development and protection of clean springs, which are significant and widespread in the north, to assist people returning back from the Lord's Resistance Army's campaign during their civil war in a very rural part of Uganda. And so my friend Ben was unfortunately deployed to Afghanistan about 2 years later, and he was killed in October of 2009. And there you can see him there in the army outfit helping a villager in the north. And as a result of that, there was a significant outpouring of support, really thrusting us into a non-governmental organization that really needed to come quite quickly to scale up and be able to allow for the corpus of funds that we were all of a sudden bequested to then implement a much greater number of projects. And so we've significantly scaled up since 2009. And of course, we wish Ben were with us, but his spirit and has simply guided us throughout this period of time.
Well, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and there needs to be that super spirit and also the willingness, the compassion to give to others to really make anything like this work. But right. Clear Water Initiative, how is it unique among the WASH community? And what does actually WASH, the acronym, stand for?
Well, first, the acronym itself stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, essentially looking at the holistic perspective, both the basic need of obtaining water, and then in order for that to be healthily incorporated into people's lives, the sanitation and the hygiene go hand in hand. And a lot of times, especially when you're working in these types of rural communities, there's not the distinct understanding that allows for one to understand, well, that water source, although it's not clear water that I'm ingesting, there's a distinct relationship between that and my health, or the health of my family, or the health of my children. So that sanitation and the hygiene essentially go hand in hand, and that's why the WASH community grew and the acronym came about. So going into what Clearwater is all about, the unique component is the processes that we put in place. A lot of NGOs will simply go in, provide the source, and leave, and put their, the name of the organization on there. What we've attempted to do is really understand the needs of the community beyond just water, go in and meet with the people, and have an extensive dialogue with them by which the product is essentially coming to an agreement, a contract, where they will sign up to really dedicate themselves to the principles of maintaining that water source for the long term. And then we, in turn, both provide that source and then the new skills, the expertise, and the understanding for them to have ad infinitum a water source that is of use for them and their community.
Yeah, Brett, talking about this, I've done a lot of work with and been in the Congo DRC, and you see the same thing, and you have a number of countries fighting over the natural resources there, and of course Uganda's been part of that and suffered through that, like you talked about the Lord Resistance Army, and so
right.
That's really great work, but also it can be quite hazardous to be out in these very rural areas where some of this conflict is going on. But going from what we saw before as far as the brackish water and then the community being involved in coming up with a well with what they affectionately call a bush pump in this case, it's amazing what this looks like and the sophistication of actually some of these water provision areas out in these rural communities that before really had almost no water.
Right. No, it's very true, and it's not. You're right. The difficulty is really in the supply chain and being able to get the materials necessary to build the infrastructure to obtain. And I mean, really, you're just going through brush and trucks to try to get to these communities, and they're 2-3 kilometers walking in the heat to try to get their water source and bringing it back in these jerry cans, as you can see in the picture now. So a significant part has been trying to develop the infrastructure so that we can make it at least easier, or at least allow for the individuals in the community to have a degree of expertise that they can then rest assured that if something were to break, either with the borehole pump or with the springs itself, that they would be able to handle that on their own, or at least contact us for the necessary means by which to fix it. And then at the same time, understand that there's a corpus of funds that the individuals in the community will be putting towards the maintenance of this water source, that as a corollary is allowed for there to be kind of a micro-lending component that we're only beginning to focus upon right now.
It's very sophisticated what you're doing, and then incorporating the addition of adding jobs, and we like to talk about the green jobs that's actually coming out of this type of activity and involving the entire community regardless of age. But why are you working in northern Uganda? I know we talked about the conflict that's gone on there, and in the overview that you've shared with us, it's about post-conflict regions. So why Uganda, and how do you see that expanding to other countries, both on the African continent and possibly even around the globe?
Well, I think from the first standpoint, the only reason really why we began in Uganda was simply because of the deployment of Ben and his troops into the north. At the time it was in 2007, and it was much closer to the time in which the internally displaced persons camps, people were beginning to return back to what was their homes, for lack of a better term. And so they were coming back to literally nothing, and it was Ben initially that was seeing that they were only there for a finite period of time, and that he wanted to be a lasting impact, to say, this is not just a short-term fix. We need to have NGOs in place and the expertise brought to these people so that we can then have a sustainable means by which they can then access clean water. And the corollary aspects, as you mentioned, with regards to jobs and allowing for there to be a positive future and outlook. So the only reason Uganda came into play was because of Ben. And at this point in time, we're shoring up. We have a wonderful degree of internal leadership, about 6 staff people based out of Gulu in the north. And the intent would be to ultimately obtain the necessary resources so that we could then replicate the processes and the overarching kind of cradle. And I don't like to use the term cradle to grave, but certainly cradle to really forever, that we are then a part of that population and part of that community. So we're looking at adjacent countries such as Congo, such as Rwanda, even such as Sudan, that could perhaps be, I wouldn't say easy transitions for us, but certainly from a logistical standpoint, and the issues, I mean, unfortunately, are very widespread in that part of the world. And so it's not an easy situation.
Well, a friend of mine, Dr. Joseph Pelton, who's been on our television program a number of times, is working on this meta-city concept as the world is rapidly urbanizing, and by 2050 they're saying at least 70 and possibly 80% of the world's population will be living in major cities, and many of those along the coast. And of course, you're working out in the country areas, but he talks about cradle to cradle. And I think that's really a better thing. But I have Laura sitting beside me, Laura Chamberlin, and she's here to back you up to Skype, where it seemed to be doing very well.
Yeah.
So she has a question for you, Brett.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about how you identify a community and then get started. What's your approach with that individual community to getting started?
We basically work with the local governance, which is kind of rudimentary, but there's been an extensive outpouring of support from the Kampala region, which is really where the resources have been dedicated prior to the LRA and the Civil War. And so we work with those communities to identify from the leadership, so that one, we have the buy-in of the political leadership, and then we work in tandem with the local infrastructure and the local government to be able to say, well, where would you like for us to concentrate our efforts? And sometimes there's not necessarily that's where we'll go. Much more so, it's a give and take. It's a partnership. And so we also work, and most of our staff, if not all of our staff, are derived from the same area. And so they also have firsthand knowledge as to, my cousin so-and-so said that this particular community. So we look to see where there is not an opportunity, where there's not the resources that are already been dedicated. And secondly, most of our work to date has been primarily concentrated based upon sources of water that other groups had gone in, and those had fallen into disrepair for one reason or another. And so much of our work had been, in the initial standpoint, just rehabilitating those places. And so those communities had been already identified, to answer your question, but now it's getting to be more expansive.
Well, we only have about, 20 seconds left, so it's got to be quick. What do you see for the future of Clearwater Initiative over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
I think that we're poised to become the eminent implementation organization for Uganda, and the hope would be that we can replicate that throughout the Horn of Africa within the next 10 or 15 years, and perhaps beyond, depending on our resources and political implications. So thank you very much for having me on the program.
Well, Brett Freedman, Director of Clearwater Initiative, thank you for being with us and sharing about what's going on in northern Uganda to provide water in a post-conflict area. And this is happening throughout the Horn of Africa as well. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. One of some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rigged out money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're we're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President, Executive Director of Emerald Planet and the Emerald Planet TV, as we come to you each week from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move forward in the 21st century. And as we move towards 2050 and we're beginning to add 2 billion new people to the planet, to the already 7 billion that we have here, how are we going to be able to take care of the needs of all these various individuals, and at the same time so that we know how to provide the basic infrastructure along with the water, the food, and the energy that's needed by these 2 billion new souls. We have someone who's actually actively working on that, actually two people that are actively working on this program to involve elementary up through middle school children to reach out to their parents so that they actually can bring about societal change through the children as they learn about climate change and the negative impacts, but also the very positive impact that they can actually have, make changes in their own homes, within their communities, their schools, and of course within their own countries. And this gentleman is joining us, David Finnigan, who is the Executive Director. Climate Change is Elementary. And Dave, welcome to us. And we can see actually Dave is coming to us by Skype from his car. And welcome. Right. That just shows your dedication. And sitting right beside me is his colleague, who is the DC area and Maryland coordinator, is Sudheer, Shukla, who is also with Climate Change is Elementary. And Dave, I love the name. How did you select the name Climate Change is Elementary? And then we're going to talk about some of the outstanding work that you're doing with elementary and middle school children. Give us the background.
Well, it all started with a program that I've been doing for years called Juggling for Success, going around to over 2,000 elementary schools all over the country and in other countries as well. And as a consequence, I learned how to go around and be with kids. So when I took the Al Gore climate change training, it made sense for me to go into elementary schools, which is where I find my home. And so I named the program Climate Change is Elementary.
Well, thank you, Dave. And I'm going to bring up this first slide because I like the notion when you and I met when you were recently in Washington, D.C., we actually had conversation about this. But looking at what you're doing, one is why I look at elementary and middle schools, secondly, versus colleges and universities. And then what is actually this bell curve going from the early adopters and the innovators all the way down to the laggards?
Well, what's happened with most of the programs that are trying to address climate change is that we are the innovators. We're over on the left side of the curve. And we tend to be told to jump down to the other end and go beat up on those laggards who are the deniers. And that's not the way cultures change. The way cultures change is first you get all of the clergy, that's the innovators, singing, and then they teach it to the choir, that's the early adopters, and the choir teaches it to the church, and that's the early majority, and then the late majority may or may not ever come along. But it's not that important that they do, and it certainly doesn't make any sense to go address them first. What really counts is to get the people who believe you or could believe you on board. And that's why we work with populations that really can understand what we're talking about and believe it and have a stake in the future, and that's the elementary school children. So we talk with every grade level. Kindergarten kids learn about dinosaurs and they learn about Pangea, and first grade learns about trees in the rainforest or frogs or galaxies or all sorts of things. Every grade gets a piece of the climate change puzzle. Another grade might get penguins, and then a grade will get polar bears. So everybody gets something. One will get hurricanes. And by the end of the day, every grade has a piece of the puzzle. And then we have our all-school assembly at the end of the day. And the kids get to put these pieces together and talk about the clean, green future. And the whole idea here is to get away from the gloom and doom of if we do everything wrong, here's how bad it will be, and to start saying, here's how great it will be when we do everything right. That's what we're doing with the kids.
Well, the whole thing about it, I think, is the wonderful attitude, the enthusiasm, and actually the joy that you're bringing to what you're doing, Dave, as far as reaching out to these very young audiences. I was raised through 4-H, you know, the head, heart, hands, and health, and that was really what we focus on, is doing real projects, you know, at your own home, in your own local community, and bringing about change, which is actually global. But I'm going to move to your colleague here who represents your interests as far as DC and Maryland. And I met him at the Real Water Film Festival, and that was absolutely fantastic. And I must say, Sudheer has been doing a wonderful job here. But why did you become involved in climate change is elementary? I mean, you're a long way from Florida where the founder is located, and you're equally as enthusiastic and moving forward in all directions within this community. And actually, you even were able to set up a school just today, I believe.
Well, we're working on schools, yeah, definitely. And first of all, thanks for having us on. But yeah, Dave and I met at the protests against the Keystone Pipeline, and so we connected since then, and then we met up again in February for the climate rally then, and then that's when we started working on bringing the program to Maryland.
Yeah. Looking at it though, as far as I know that you're communicating with principals in this area, so why and we're going to ask Dave the same question, so we'll be able to compare, but why are you focusing on principals and them as the leaders as far as being able to implement this climate change as elementary in the schools?
Well, we look at we're focusing on schools where you have where principals are in control of what goes on in the schools, and so they're big decision makers. So we want to make sure that they're on board and they know what's going on in terms of the program, and we have their positive feedback about the program. And we're also connecting with people on the PTA, and if the school already has a green program, the green team leader, and yeah, basically those are the three main people we want to connect with in schools.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very important to have the principals, having been involved for a number of years in education at the local and state level. If you don't have the principals involved, it's very difficult to have any type of program within the schools. So as I shared with Dave when we met recently, it's very important that you involve the principals as the opinion leaders within these various schools. But Dave, going back to you, and I know that your focus really is to educate the children, and then through that you're reaching to the parents and then other caregivers and to people within the community. So when you offer those evening sessions, I know that you're getting involved with the entire community all at one time, and it sounds incredible, the amount of energy and enthusiasm, but also the knowledge and information that you're sharing directly into the community. Tell us about how you organize that, the number of people that may be involved, from the children during the day and the teachers in the school, and then how that broadens out into the community in the evening sessions.
Yeah, the key to this whole program is the flow of the day. We start with the teachers meeting in the morning, then we take the kids a grade level at a time. We have our assembly at the end of the day, and we get to learn about the clean green future in the assembly. Then that same night, the parents come in, and we get huge numbers of parents because we get the kids to go home and go, "Mom, we've got to go back to school. I'm in the show." And they are, because it's all about the kids. The parents come in, the kids tell them what they learned, And then the kids and the parents sit down together and make a family sustainability checklist of all the things that they promise they're going to do before the kids graduate from high school in order to reduce their carbon footprint. And then we put the kids in charge of the lists. And we say, put it up on the refrigerator door, and every time your grown-up does something on the list, give them a hug and tell them you love them and thank them so much for the clean, green future. And if we do that in this school, and we do it in every school all over the country and all over the world, we will have a clean, green future. And if we don't, we won't. It's that simple. The kids get it, and they bring their parents along, just like they did with seatbelts, just like they did with recycling, just like they did with stop smoking. So many things started in the schools, and we work with the elementary kids because they're the ones who have the most enthusiasm, and we can get all of them. If we work with high school or college kids, we'll only get a small percentage.
You know, I think going back to your bell chart, I want to bring up these slides too. I like to keep these in the background because it really goes to the heart of what you're actually sharing with the children. So if we can bring these slides up. But Sudheer, how do you identify the presenters that you're going to be using in Washington, D.C. and have them involved? And what kind of education or training will they receive to be able to do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two basic things we're looking for in presenters. One is that they're very concerned about climate change. And the second is that they really love kids because they're going to be working with kids.
If we can bring up these slides, please. I'd like to have these in the backdrop. Thank you.
So, yeah, they have to really love kids. And so in terms of connecting with people, we're looking at climate change and environmental events and conferences, talking to people there. We're going to connect with local universities, people in, say, environmental science programs who are going to be graduating soon and who are looking for jobs. And in terms of the training itself, the way that's going to be organized is...
We're out of time. I'm sorry about that. But thank you. And Dave, thank you for being with us and sharing about what you're doing as climate change is elementary. And it's just really phenomenal what you're doing. And this outstanding young man who's sitting right beside me in the studio is doing great work for your organization and actually great work for the schools and for the local communities. So thank you for being with us on the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.